Hello and welcome to episode number 228 of Just Jets. What is going on? I am Matt O'Leary back with another episode. Today's going to be a fun one. I went on Twitter and asked for your hottest takes for the 2024 NFL season for the New York Jets. We're going to go through some of my favorites, and we have a couple of voicemails to get into. As a reminder, tickets are on sale right this minute for the Talkin' Jets group outing, which is happening in week 4 against the Denver Broncos. Tickets are moving quickly, so make sure to get on yours right now. So here's what's included with your ticket to the event, which is available on talkinjets.com. You get a tailgate with Tailgate Joe, which is food and drinks, including alcohol. So free alcohol for your ticket. With your ticket, a seat with us, and you get on the field after the game. It's a whole lot of fun. You have a tailgate only package available and a ticket only package available if you prefer to go about it that way. Get your tickets now on talkinjets.com. Okay, let's do it. We're going to get into this episode where I'm going to give you my favorite hot takes that were thrown to me by Jet fans on Twitter, and then I will react to them as we go here. I have 10 for you on this list. The first from Buffalo Jet fan, who is, his is very simple. Will McDonald is good. And I agree with that one. That's something that I think right now, for some Jet fans, not all, is a little bit controversial, because we could all agree that nobody really loved the Will McDonald pick when the Jets selected him in the first round in 2023. It came as a massive surprise. If you remember, the debate at the time was really, should the Jets go offensive line or wide receiver? And a lot of the offensive linemen go off the board, including Broderick Jones, the pick right before the New York Jets were there with Will McDonald. And instead, Broderick Jones goes, and then it seems like, okay, well, I guess Jackson Smith and Jigba seems like he's going to be a lock for the New York Jets here. And then that's not the case. Actually, that's not the case at all. They go with an edge rusher after drafting an edge rusher the year prior, which was a surprise. But despite what we may have felt at the time, I don't think we should hold that against Will McDonald. And there was some promise from him in year one. I understand he didn't play a ton of snaps, but with Bryce Huff gone, with John Franklin Myers gone, Will McDonald's snap count is going to rise. I would guess he plays somewhere around 50% of snaps, maybe a touch lower, maybe a touch higher, depending on how the rotation ends up being, shaken out. And I would not be surprised at all if we see him push close to 10 sacks this year with the improved playing time. Again, that's something that's hard to project, because he only played 19% of snaps in year one. In year two, that's going to go up by definitely more than double. He's going to get over 40%, that's for sure. So I'm going to say he finishes 9 sacks. That'll be my prediction for Will McDonald this year. I think he'll be better than some are anticipating because of a quote-unquote disappointing first year from him. The second hot take is from Brandon, who says Jeremy Rucker establishes himself as tight end 1. Now, I like me some Jeremy Rucker. I was a fan of him even before the Jets drafted him. If you go back to that draft class, I talked a lot about Rucker at Ohio State and how I thought even back then, which is 3-4 years ago now, I thought Rucker was underutilized as a pass catcher during his days at Ohio State. With that in mind, I don't really see a path to Jeremy Rucker being the number 1 tight end this year. Now, if they have to make a difficult decision at the end of the year with Tyler Conklin, if they want to bring him back or not, and then they're going to say, going into 2025, we've seen enough from Jeremy Rucker to be the number 1 tight end, that's a different story. But I think he's going to be a serviceable second tight end. I think he'll be utilized a lot as a blocker, because I don't anticipate the Jets really being in a spot where they're going to keep Nick Bawden on this roster as a fullback. So that would then mean that Rucker's going to play some of the H-back role and be the team's, second tight end and being used in a blocking role, which is, again, completely fine. I think he does that role well. I think he catches some more passes, not like I'm going to say he's going to have 500 receiving yards or anything like that, but 100, 200 receiving yards, maybe a touchdown or two in the red zone. Also depends on what injuries. Like Tyler Conklin's been healthy throughout his entire Jets tenure, but if he gets banged up, maybe he gets a little bit more reps, certain weeks. So I am still holding my Jeremy Rucker stock, but I'm not selling my Tyler Conklin stock yet either. I think he is going to cement himself as the tight end one for this year. And then after this year, again, that's kind of up for debate what ends up happening here. All right, Will is up next, who says Breece Hall rushes for 1,500 yards and catches for 1,000 yards. Okay, that would be, to put that in perspective, that would be historic all-purpose yards. That's only been done a handful of times in NFL history where players have had 1,000 receiving yards as well as 1,000 rushing yards. And 2,500 all-purpose yards is just an insane number. 2,000 all-purpose yards is an insane number. I think he clears 1,000 rushing yards. I'm going to say probably between 1,200 and 1,400 rushing yards is going to be my guess. And receiving between 550 and 750 is going to be my guess. So I don't think he goes over 1,000 receiving yards. Spoiler alert, I think the Jets only have one 1,000-yard receiver this year in Garrett Wilson, which is fine. I think there'll be a lot of guys like Breece Hall and Tyler Conklin and Mike Williams and Malachi Corley and Xavier Gibson kind of in this stack together between like 300 to 750 receiving yards in that range. So while, again, I'm excited about Breece Hall, I think he's going to cement himself as the number 2 running back in football this year behind Christian McCaffrey. I think this is a little ambitious for me, but hey, I asked you for your hot takes, so this being a hot take is quite okay in my book. Eric is up next with his hot take. He says that Garrett Wilson breaks Brandon Marshall's all-time season best numbers, over 109 catches, over 1,502 yards, and over 14 touchdowns. I can't even fathom a receiver going above those numbers. And really, Brandon's 2015 season was just absolutely spectacular. He was an absolute monster that year. And now for Garrett, his best season was 1,100 yards, and he had Zach Wilson and Joe Flacco and Mike White throwing him the football that year. But can he go over 1,200? I think I'm not going to go over each one of these numbers. That seems like a massive numbers. Now, I think he's going to be very, very good. But for me, I'm closer to... Catches is going to be close. I think I'm right around the 100 catches, probably 1,300 or 1,400 receiving yards, and around 10 touchdowns, which is, again, undoubtedly one of the best wide receiver seasons in Jets history. Brandon Marshall arguably has the best with 1,500, 14 touchdowns, and 109 catches. I think, again, we're going to see some close production, but over that will be tough for Garrett Wilson. And again, reminder, last year for the New York Jets, I'm pulling him up right now, his stats on the year. He had 95 catches, 1,042 yards, and 3 touchdowns. In his career, he only has 7 touchdowns. That's more of a product of the quarterback play than it is on Garrett Wilson. But I'm going to say 102 catches with that number closer to 1,400 yards, and somewhere between 8 to 12 touchdowns is going to be my guess. And we should all be thrilled with that kind of a season from Garrett Wilson. That's for sure. Mike says Aaron Rodgers finishes top 3 in MVP votes. Okay, that would be absolutely thrilling. Now, as we know, Aaron Rodgers won the MVP in 2020 and 2021, and I'll read off his numbers for you in each of those years. So in 2020, he had a 70.7 completion percentage, 4,299 passing yards, 48 touchdowns, 5 picks. 48 touchdowns is just a number that would take 3 years for the Jets to hit. Normally 121.5 passer rating and a 79.8 QBR. He led the league in completion percentage, touchdown passes, touchdown percentage, interception percentage, yards per, air yards per attempt, quarterback rating, and QBR. Just a monster season. Then followed it up with another stellar one. The following year, 68.9 completion percentage, 37 touchdowns, 4 picks, 4,115 yards, a 111.9 passer rating, and a 74.1 QBR. His numbers took a dip that final year in Green Bay with 3,695 yards, 26 touchdowns, 12 picks, a 91.1 rating. And I think he's probably going to end up finishing somewhere between his 2021 numbers and 22 numbers. So right around 4,000 yards, somewhere around 30 touchdowns, 8 picks, maybe a passer rating right around 100, somewhere in that range. In order to be top 3 for MVP, he's got to be like the number 2 quarterback in football this year. I would be surprised if we get that from him. I would love for that to happen. Please, obviously, I'm a Jets fan. I want the Jets to win every single game, and I want every player on the Jets to be the best player ever. So, sure, that would be stellar. But for me, I think he's going to end up being somewhere between the 8th to 12th best quarterback in football this year, which would the Jets haven't had anything close to that kind of production in a very, 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 very long time. And if that's the case, the Jets win a lot of games this year. But top 3 for MVP would surprise me. This next one from Justin is another good one that I like. He says, Quantez Stiggers plays a big role and ends up becoming our cornerback 2 for the future. So I agree with the second half of this one. I think he is going to be this team's number 2 corner in 2025. And I don't think that's crazy as a hot take. It's definitely ambitious because he was a day 3 pick, and the Jets have a really good cornerback trio right now with Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed and Michael Carter in the slot. It's a really good lineup from top to bottom, but they're going to have to make a tough decision with one of their 2 guys, either Michael Carter in the slot or DJ Reed as an outside corner. And I wouldn't be surprised if Stiggers is an internal option for the New York Jets. The thing that I question with this comment or with this hot take is how much of a role he'll play this year. I think he slots in as the team's 4th corner. And unless there's an injury, I don't see him getting a ton of time. Maybe he gets limited snaps and plays well in those snaps, but a big role this year, I don't think we see him in a big role this year. I actually say he plays a limited role this year. We see some upside in that limited role, though. And then we see him be a starter in year 2. That would be my take for Quantez, and I think we should all be thrilled if that's the case. Up next, JetUpPod says Tyler Conklin 10-plus touchdowns. So in case you didn't know, Tyler Conklin had 0 last year, 0 touchdowns, which is, again, just an absolutely insane thing to think about. Just again, more of a product of the quarterback play around him than anything else. He had 621 yards on 61 catches, no touchdowns. First year with the Jets, 552 yards and 3 touchdowns. I think I'm going to end up probably between 500 and 600 receiving yards for Conklin this year, but his touchdowns will be 6 to 8 would be my guess. Now, we have seen Aaron Rodgers put up really impressive seasons with tight ends who you wouldn't necessarily expect it from. Like Robert Tonyan has had monster seasons with Aaron Rodgers, or at least a monster season with Aaron Rodgers. I believe he had a 10-touchdown season. Pro Football Reference isn't working for me right now. I don't know why it keeps giving me a bad gateway update or error message, but he had 11 in 2020. His 48 touchdown season, Robert Tonyan had 11 touchdowns. In his career, he has 17. So 11 of his 17 touchdowns came that year. Conklin, I think, will be a red zone threat. I'm gonna stick in that 6 to 8 range, but I think we see him around 500 or 600 receiving yards this year, and is a solid tight end for the New York Jets. All right, let's go up next. Slashy, who says Will McDonald will have 12 plus sacks this year. That is a hot take, and I don't think it's that wild. It's bold. It is for sure a bold take. There's no denying that. But when you look at the talent that Will McDonald has and his speed off the edge, he is going to be a sack artist, and you hope he becomes what Hassan Reddick was at his best in his career, putting up like 15 sacks. Can he do that in year 2? As I mentioned at the top of the show when I was discussing the comment from Buffalo Jet fan, I think we see 9 roughly sacks for him this year. So I would take the under. If you set it at 11.5 or 12 plus, I would take the under. But I think he's close to double digits this year. And I think we would all sign up for that, especially if Hassan Reddick is also going to be right around double digits. And like if this D-line is projected to be as good, or if this D-line, is as good as what it's projected to be, then I think the Jets are in fantastic shape for this season. Sko is up next. It says Corley, Offensive Rookie of the Year. Now, this one I am not buying, and I like Malachi Corley. I just don't think there's a world where we see him with that kind of production for what it would take to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. Garrett Wilson won it in 2022 with 83 receptions, 1,103 yards, and 4 touchdowns. You also had last year, you had a stellar quarterback season from C.J. Stroud, who was able to win the Offensive Rookie of the Year. He went for 4,100 yards, 23 touchdowns, 5 picks, and a 100.8 rating. Malachi Corley would have to go well over 1,000 yards, and I just don't see a world where that's the case for him this year. I think he's going to be third in the pecking order for wide receivers, and I think Breece Hall and Tyler Conklin have more targets than he does in the air. So for me, I'm going to say Malachi Corley finishes maybe around like 400 receiving yards. He's going to be more of a role player this year. I'm not saying that he won't have an impact, but I just don't think it'll be Offensive Rookie of the Year kind of impact. And then last but certainly not least, we have Les, who says Braylon Allen will have more rushing TDs than Breece Hall. He then goes on to say Braylon Allen will get the red zone touches and will be a TD vulture. That would be very frustrating for Breece Hall fantasy owners, but for Jet fans who just want to see the team win, punch that ball in the end zone. I don't think Braylon Allen's going to have more than like 8 rushing touchdowns, which I think that's where Breece ends up in that 8 to 10 range. I think for me, I'm going to say Braylon Allen maybe has 4 touchdowns. All of them come by the goal line. I don't anticipate Braylon Allen like breaking one loose and having like some big 60-yard rushing touchdown. But will he punch some in from the goal line? Yeah, I think he does. I think also Isaiah Davis will get 1 or 2 down by the goal line as well. So it's a little bit of a red zone hog or a touchdown vulture. Handcuffing Breece Hall, if you will. But I think Hall is going to have somewhere between 8 to 10 rushing touchdowns, and I don't think Allen gets up that high, at least not this year. To the voicemails we go. Peter from up in the beautiful Hudson Valley wants to talk about owners.
Hey, Matt. It's Peter from up in the beautiful Hudson Valley, calling in this week during the lean times, getting ready for the ramp up to training camp. And sort of an interesting question to ask you during this void time, shall we say. Thinking back over the seasons that I've been a Jets fan, which is coming up on, like I said, about 45 seasons or years now. The Jets have had two owners during my time, Leon Hess and, of course, Woody Johnson and the Johnson family. And I looked back because I couldn't remember now exactly when Woody Johnson took over, and it was 1999. So that means it's been 25 years since the Johnson family has owned the Jets. And I wanted to know your thoughts on what you think has been good and bad about the Johnson family owning the Jets.
Okay.
I know they've always wanted to make a splash. Brett Favre, Tim Tebow, Aaron Rodgers. But you wonder if they've really, during this 25 years, have wanted to have a consistent winner until more recently. And, you know, the way that Joe Douglas has been trying to build this team over the last few years with the youth that's there, it seems like a team that should be able to do so year after year after year. It still irks me that they sort of got a bypass last year when Aaron Rodgers went down after 4 plays. But compared to Leon Hess's reign as owner, where he really didn't want to spend a lot of money, Jets really didn't even have a general manager most years, they failed at the draft so many times, time and time and time again. It's been, I think, a better experience being under the Johnson family, but I just would really like to see them do more. And certainly the one thing that I would love to see the Jets do after all this time is have their own freaking stadium instead of sharing a stadium with the Giants or anyone else as they have over the years. You know, they've been second fiddle in most cases between like Polo Grounds and Shea Stadium and Giant Stadium and everything. So I just wanted to let me know your thoughts on that and what you think of how the Johnsons have been doing over the past 25 years as owners of the Jets. And I also wanted to say congratulations on your new home with your fiancé.
Thank you.
Good luck with everything there. And as always, go Jets.
Thank you, Peter. Yeah, it's going to be a couple busy weeks in a row. Might not get as much content from me as you're used to. I appreciate you guys sticking with me, though, and we'll be back on track in the new house very soon to what we are used to. So I wasn't really around for the Leon Hess days. He was the Jets' sole owner from 1984 through, I believe, his death in 1999. I obviously, I've said it before, but I got into the New York Jets when I was young in the early 2000s. The first year I really remember very well was 2003. And then, you know, I really count my fandom from then on. There's been some good moments for sure for the Johnson family. The 2000s were great, actually. Made the playoffs in 02, 4, 6, 9, 10. That's 5 years in the first, 10 years or 11 years of the 2000s. So they were in it and very relevant, very early on. Unfortunately, they also deserve a lot of the blame for their playoff drought from 2011 through today on things that have gone really, really wrong for the New York Jets. It's never been for the Johnsons a issue of money, which you can appreciate. Their problem is their involvement. They get way, way, way too involved in the day-to-day operations of this team. And that's what I think bugs me the most. Christopher Johnson, when he was here, I think took a little bit of a step back in comparison to Woody. Woody seems like he's much more hands-on. I just wish he wouldn't be that way. I kind of want him to just, pay the football people, have the football people do their jobs. Have a president or a general manager, however you want to do it, and let them run the show. There's been, again, as I said, there's been some good moments. 2009 and 2010, the best 2 years of my Jets fandom to date so far, by far, not even remotely close. But there's also been a lot of bad moments and embarrassing things over that time. They brought in, Tim Tebow. The Favre thing didn't work out. They also had, the Geno Smith gets his jaw punched out drama. It's just the Gase hiring. Oh my gosh, how can we not bring up the Adam Gase hiring? Disaster. Absolute disaster. So, are they the worst owners in town? Probably not. I'd say probably not. I think the Wilpons with the Mets were worse. I think Dolan was bad for a while, but I wouldn't necessarily classify the Johnsons as great owners. I think they get way too involved for their own being. Let's close with PG from Long Island. He's got some Jets predictions for us, which is fitting for this show.
Hello, Matt O'Leary. PG from Long Island here. I want to do something a little different this week. I want to talk about my 24 season prediction, win-loss record. First of all, I think the Jets have a really top of the league roster, so I think I'm even underscoring it a little bit. But I see them at 11 wins, 6 losses. The 6 losses I see coming at San Francisco, the opening game.
Okay.
I actually think they have a shot of winning that game. San Francisco often starts slow, but I can't be such a Jets homer to say they're going to go 3,000 miles across the country opening night, Monday night, and beat one of the top rosters and top coaching staffs in the league. Second loss, I think, I see at Pittsburgh. Tomlin has never had a losing season, another great coach, tough venue, so I see that as a loss. And then there's several home games they have that are tough. I'm going to give them a loss with Indianapolis. They kicked Texas ass last year, so I think they match up well there to win that. A couple of tough games, Chargers after the bye at Seattle, so those can be tough. But I think they'll win 3 out of 4 of those games. I'm giving a loss to Indianapolis. And then the other 3 I see coming from within the division. Now, I think they will sweep New England. They're just a better team. I think they'll split with the Bills, as they generally do. And then, unfortunately, I see them losing twice to Miami. And
Okay.
Even though one of those games is at MetLife Stadium in January, and Miami is a famously bad cold weather team, fact is, last year Miami beat combined score to beat the Jets 64-13. McDaniels just coaches circles around Saleh, and until I see that change, I really can't get the Jets to win against Miami. So 11-6, obviously, could be a couple of different games here and there. It could be 10 wins, it could be 12 wins, but take 11-6. I think that's about what it's going to be here in this early off-season sort of downtime in the NFL prediction. And as always, Matt O'Leary, love to hear your thoughts. And as always, go Jets.
I appreciate it, PG. I think in my first go-round for when the schedule came out, I also had them at 11-6, and my losses were the 49ers, Vikings, Steelers, Texans, Dolphins, and Bills. So split with the Dolphins, split with the Bills, and 4 more losses in there. Now, I agree with you. I think 10 is my floor, and my ceiling is going to be 12. Can they win 13, 14, 15 games? I guess if everything breaks right, I just can't see myself predicting that without being, a big Jets homer. But for me, I'll go through the reasons why I think they split with Miami. I think Miami in their own building is going to be a very, very, very tough game. But at home, the last week of the year, it's going to be cold at MetLife Stadium in January. It's going to be a very cold day. Could even be a bad weather game. And the Miami Dolphins have struggled outside of their element in the cold, in bad weather. Tua, I don't think, has won a game when it's under 40 degrees in the NFL. So chances are in January in MetLife, it's going to be. And I think the Jets are talented enough to split. Same thing with Buffalo. Buffalo, they're always tight games. But some of the other ones, like I know Minnesota, you might look at as a head scratcher. There's always a trap game, a game you don't expect them to lose. And for me, I think going across and playing in England or London, like that could be just a weird game, like a 19-16 kind of game where they hit a late field goal as time expires. Like the London games are always bizarre. So I wouldn't put that one past them. I think they sweep New England. I think New England is going to take a step back. Houston, not very. Houston, they beat up on them, and it didn't look very good from Houston's side of things the last time these two teams played. But I think Houston's a team that's going to do some damage this year. I know you mentioned the Colts as a game to watch for, but the Colts and Seattle, I think, are two teams the Jets should handle. I'll give you another sneaky tough one, the Rams, but why I'm picking the Jets in that one is it's a 1:00 game on the East Coast, and the Rams are a West Coast team. So I think that's a tough call for them. So those are my predictions for now and my reasonings, but we'll get into that more as the season gets closer. Guys, I appreciate you hanging with me for this fun episode today of Just Jets. I'll be back next Wednesday. Please subscribe if you're new. I'll catch you next time.